guys, I'm back to answer more questions. Hope everyone is having a lovely day. We are not very far from the premiere of Daryl Dixon, and I am so excited. We've only got like less than a month, a few weeks now. So let's get to some of these questions. Sarcastic Octopi, how are you? Super weird flashback edit posted today. Oh yes, I did look at this. It includes Rick's It's Not On You line, Glenn and Maggie, and also Lori's last scene. It finishes back with Daryl. I'm really curious about your thoughts on it. It's just extra suspicious to me with everything else we've been seeing. All the love from the cephalopod, who may not stalk your posts. I'm glad you stalked my posts. So this is totally off topic, but Remarkably Bright Creatures is about an octopus, and I think you should read it. It is just a delightful book. Anyway, but especially when I see the little orange octopus emoji, I always think of Remarkably Bright Creatures. So go read that if you haven't read it yet. I think you would like it. Anyway, I did look at this edit. So this was posted, I believe, by Skybound Entertainment, and this is showing that The Walking Dead also reposted it here. These are 2 official accounts, guys, okay? That's always important to remember. Official accounts. These are not fan accounts. Now, to describe what happens in this edit, it's a pretty quick one. It starts with this, as she said, it starts with Daryl and Rick in 416A, sitting by the car. This is the You're My Brother scene, and this is also where Rick asks him about Beth and says, is she dead? And he says she's just gone. We don't actually see that part in the edit, but I just wanted to remind you that this scene, he very specifically asks about Beth and if she is dead. And Daryl doesn't say no, but he also doesn't say yes. He says she's just gone. Anyway, so then the other scenes that it shows Glenn and Maggie. The one that the scene that it shows with them is from season 4, and it's when they're up in the tower at the prison together, and he takes that picture of her when she's sleeping. That's the part it shows. And then it shows Lori giving birth. It shows her talking to Carl and saying, you know, it's a very tragic scene when she's saying goodbye to Carl, and she says he's her baby and he's the best thing she ever did. And then we see her, you know, like screaming in childbirth. So I watched it a few times, and I was trying to figure out what the common thread is. That's what you always got to figure out. What is the common thread in these things? And I was thinking, well, the first thing that I was trying to make it mean, which I don't think it does, is that we do know from that leaked scene that he mentions Glenn and Merle. And I was going, okay, well, maybe this is more of him feeling guilty about Glenn. So we have this scene with Rick where he's feeling guilty about losing Beth. Then it shows Glenn, maybe to show that he's feeling guilty about Glenn, because all of the promo they're doing, you have to understand that it has something to do with Daryl. This is promo leading up to Daryl Dixon season 2. So it's going to have to do with what's going on in season 2 and probably Daryl's mindset and the stuff he's going through internally and all of that. But then we have the Lori scene, and I was going, okay, I'm not sure how to relate this, because Daryl and Lori really didn't have much of a relationship, and there's Carl, but I was going, are they gonna talk about Carl? Are they gonna bring up Carl's death? They did that really more during The Ones Who Live, but I don't really see them doing it during, I mean, I could be wrong. Anyway, so I had to think about it a little bit more and a little bit more abstractly. And what I think that this is about, each of these scenes is about, well, okay, how do you say this? You could say that, okay, let's put aside Rick and Daryl's scene for a minute. We've got Glenn and Maggie. Glenn is dead. So Maggie lost the love of her life. Then we have Lori's death. Now, I'm one who believes that Lori was not the love of Rick's life. Michonne is. But she was still his wife and somebody that he chose to marry, and she did die. So we have kind of a representation of 2 couples, and one half of them is now deceased. And then we come back to the Rick and Daryl scene. Obviously, this is not a scene that Beth is in. I think that would be too obvious if they would have done a Beth and Daryl scene here. And then there's the fact that it never actually went canon, whereas obviously Glenn and Maggie and Rick and Lori were. But in the scene, so just think about it this way. You had Rick and Lori. Lori died. You had Glenny, that works too. Glenn and Maggie. Glenn died. Then you have Rick and Daryl, not a couple, who are talking about Beth and saying, is she dead? She's just gone. So I almost feel like it's their way of showing that Daryl lost Beth, and maybe he thinks she's dead, but is she really? And then I think it is interesting that the line we do hear, the only line we hear from this scene between Daryl and Rick is, "It's not on you," which does show his guilt. It is referring to a lot of the guilt that Daryl still feels over the loss of people. And that, because of the leaked script, we know they will be addressing. So, yeah, those would be my thoughts on it. That's what I came up with. It is pretty subtle. I will say that they they do edits like this, and it's like, okay, I have to think hard about what they're getting at here. But I think they are being purposefully vague. And, you know, anybody who isn't part of TD and watches this just thinks that it's a nice throwback edit, you know. But, you know, whether my interpretation is correct or not, just always remember that they never just throw something together just for the hay of it. You know, they don't. There's always a theme. There's always a common thread that runs through what they put into a promo like this, and you just have to figure out what it is. And that was what I came up with. If anyone can come up with anything else, let us know. I'd love to hear your interpretation. So hopefully that helps. Just an observation, it's so weird how Beth and Daryl are seen across different platforms. I feel like the younger audience who just started watching the show see them platonic brother and sister. I go on TikTok and there will be great edits of them, but when I comment how I wish they'd gotten together, these kids act as if Beth was 12 and Daryl was 50 and think I'm crazy. Maybe because it's a different generation, but I want to be like, y'all weren't there. Back in 2013, 14, and onward, people wanted them to be together. I was there for it. I remember. Oh, that's funny. You can't say that. You don't know. Yeah, I'm totally with you. Yeah, so, well, I mean, in a lot of ways, I think this is to be expected. So I could go a few different directions on this. Number one, it is a different generation. Number two, they were not there at the beginning. And I mean, if you're saying they're just starting to watch it, I do wonder if their opinion will change once they watch season 4. Because I don't think there was anybody who was, you know, doing rah, rah, rah Beth and Daryl in season 2 just because we hadn't thought of it. And it didn't seem like that was where the show was going, you know. It was after season 4 that everything changed. So, I mean, I would bet a good percentage of them that will change their mind on that once they actually see the lovely episodes still and alone. But the other thing is that for the rising generation, Norman is a lot older than they are. And what this makes me think of is, so when I was a teenager and young college age, I really loved the show The Last of the Mohicans, which has Daniel Day-Lewis in it. And me and my sisters used to watch that and think he was just really hot stuff, right? Incidentally, Rick Andy looks a lot like Daniel Day-Lewis in a lot of... not so much when he has the beard, which he usually does, but in season 5 when he shaved his beard, I was like amazed how much he looked like Daniel Day-Lewis. Anyway, well, now we're all older, and my sister has a young teenager who's 13, and she showed her the film, The Last of the Mohicans. It's actually a really excellent film and very, very romantic. And my sister told her teenager, yeah, when I was your age, I thought he was hot. Do you think he's hot? And my niece made a barfing sound. I was like, that's disgusting, Mom. And it just makes me laugh. But the point is, teenagers today, most of them have tastes where they like boys their own age. So to look at Daryl and think he's hot, that is very foreign to them. And that's totally normal for their age. And we do know that the average age of somebody on TikTok is much younger than somebody who is on Facebook or even Instagram. The last metrics that I heard, Facebook is very much more skewed toward people who are almost elderly, like 60 and above, 60, 70, 80. They're predominantly on Facebook as a social media platform. And that's not to say there aren't people of other ages. There's people of all ages on Facebook, but you'll find that a large percentage of the audience is older people of the older generation. People on Instagram tend to be more middle-aged in 30s, 40s, 50s. And then TikTok is definitely youngsters. So, no, I feel you. I'm with you. Like I said, I do think some of them will change their minds once they've seen the beauty of Beth and Daryl interacting. But also, it's just their age. And it's one of those things, too, where in 10 years, even if they didn't change their minds watching still, once they get to be middle-aged, they might rewatch it and go, okay, I can see that now. You know what I mean? So it's just, you got to understand that people have different outlooks depending on what stage of life they're in. And in fact, I actually saw this a lot, not a lot, but with a few people that I worked with back when season 4 was on. I remember talking to this lady, her name was Becky, that I worked with, and she didn't like Beth and Daryl together. She was like, I don't know. I don't think it's toxic. She was like, no, I don't think he's a pedophile. I don't think it's toxic like that. I just don't like it that there's such a big age gap. And I said, yeah, but she's 18. And she's like, yeah, no, I know. And she said, but I have a 17-year-old. And if she came home with a 35-year-old, I would not be happy about that. And I was going, okay, that makes perfect sense. You know, in our day and age, a parent is going to feel a little disturbed if their child, who is just barely an adult, is dating someone that much older than they are. I get it. You know, I do understand why that would be concerning to a mother. But on the flip side, as we've all discussed, it's the apocalypse, and it's not like she has a lot of options, and you're not going to get anyone who is cooler or kinder or sweeter or more protective than Daryl. You know what I mean? So it's just the situation of the thing. And more specifically, I actually got her to admit this. If she wasn't thinking about her daughter and, you know, not thinking like a mother being in that situation, like if it was her and she was unmarried and then she met her husband and he happened to be 10 years older than her, and she was like, oh yeah, that would be fine. And I was like, okay, see, then what it is your bias as a mother. And that's not a bad thing. You're just being protective of your child. But again, it depends on the stage of life they're in and, you know, just kind of the bias with which they see it. And not all of it's bad. It's just, it is what it is. So, yeah, I really kind of went off on a tangent on that one, but hopefully that helps. I wouldn't worry about it too much. Like I said, give them 10 years, let them live life a little bit, and I would bet that their perspective will change. You'd think since Emily just made a Cameo account, we can pay a good amount to ask questions and she'll have to answer them point blank, LOL. I'm not sure what that means. A Cameo account? You're going to have to write in again and tell me what you mean. I'm not sure what account that is. But, you know, it would be nice, honestly, if we could ask any question, pay money to ask any question, and they had to answer it. I don't even think I'd go for Emily or Norman. I'd go for Gimple. I'd be like, dude, sit down. Here's my money. Just tell me what's going on. So, I mean, I doubt that'll ever happen, that they'll just let us ask questions. I mean, like, we can always ask, I suppose. We ask on social media. Plenty of people have asked, but they're never going to give us a totally correct answer, at least not until, I don't know, the Walking Dead universe is over and they're done telling their stories, which may not be for a really long time. So, again, I'm just not sure exactly what you mean by that, but go ahead and write in again and give me a little more details and maybe I can give you a better answer. Okay. The animosity that the carolers seem to have towards Zabel and Kang is insane. Sure, I lost all respect for Gimple after Coda, but they also seem to believe that Kang got fired and has nothing to do with the shows anymore, as well as Gimple. It's strange. Well, to split hairs here, I don't think it's strange. I think it's them refusing to accept reality, and they think if they just deny it hard enough that it'll end up being true. And it won't. Maybe this isn't the nicest comparison, but have you ever seen a toddler who is playing peekaboo with their parent, and just because the toddler doesn't quite understand spatial physics yet, they'll put their hands over their own eyes and then say, you can't see me? And we always just kind of laugh at that sort of thing, because obviously we can see them, they just can't see us, but the way that they are interpreting it and the way that they are articulating it, they're going, you can't see me, because they've covered their own eyes. Really cute behavior in a toddler, but in adults, it can be kind of annoying when they do that, and that's kind of what they're doing. They're saying because Gimple is no longer the showrunner and Kang is no longer the showrunner, they must have gotten fired. That's just willful ignorance. They've told us a million times what's going on. They have been promoted. They are now responsible not just for one show, but for several, so they cannot be the day-to-day showrunner anymore. And they are the two highest executives when it comes to creative decisions and the content that goes into the show for the entire Walking Dead universe. You know, they're not the money behind it. That would be the studio, AMC. But in terms of creativity, the creative content that, what's actually happening in the show and happening in the episodes, number 1 is Gimple and number 2 is Kang. So they can say this all they want, but it just shows, I wouldn't even say their ignorance, because I do think most of them know better. They're just denying it. They just want it to be true, and it's not. So it's kind of like they're putting their hands over their eyes and going, see, you can't see me. If we can't see Gimple and Kang, they must have been fired. And it's like, well, if you really want to go on believing that, you're welcome to, I guess, but you're not right. So yeah, I feel you. This is the last one I have as of today. Nice to have you back. Thank you. You mentioned the other day that the script leak is probably from the showrunners. My question is, why did they spoil so much? If it was just to let us know Daryl is always thinking of Beth, they didn't need to spoil Isabel's death, hallucinations of Sophia, etc. Okay, so a couple of ways I could go on this. First of all, and this is something that's difficult for people to understand sometimes, especially people who don't write, but people always say they want to be surprised, right, by a storyline. They say they want twists and turns, and they want unexpected things to happen in the story, and they do. But at the same time, I don't think that most people who are just consuming fiction in one format or another, whether it's in a book or on a television show or a video game or whatever, they don't understand the extent to which they expect things to happen. If a story goes completely off the rails to where you cannot even begin to guess where it's going, most people lose interest in that story. So, people can say what they want about stories being formulaic or story structure or using templates for story, but the truth is, human beings actually enjoy that. And it's usually on more of a subconscious level than a conscious level, but we enjoy being able to guess where the story is going to go. And so that's why when they set something up, sometimes it'll jump into our head and be like, oh, that's a setup for later. What's going to happen with that? You know what I mean? But we enjoy knowing something's going to happen and then waiting for it to pay off. And I would argue that the best evidence for this is the rise of Team Delusional, because they set up so many things for Beth and Daryl. And then if she really did die in Coda, they didn't pay them off. And it felt like, what the freak? Like, why would you do that? You know what I mean? It's not even so much that we have a problem with them killing off characters. Obviously, we wouldn't have wanted them to kill off Beth, but I like most of the characters in the show, and I'm always sad when a character gets killed off. But if they have closed their arc to where it feels very complete, then even though I'm sad, I'm still okay. I can get behind it because they told a complete story. The reason that Beth's death was so shocking wasn't so much just because she died or just because the shock came out of nowhere, but because we didn't expect it based on what they had set up for her. So basically the biggest no-no that you can do to the audience as a creator of fiction is to set things up and then not pay them off. It is the fastest way to piss off your audience. It is the fastest way for them to swear you off and say, I hate you, I will never consume anything that you write ever again. And look at what happened. I mean, the previous asker even said this, right? A lot of people did. That they were pissed at Gimple after Coda and they lost all respect for him and they did not want to watch the show anymore. Again, whether you realize it or not, that's less about your love for the character. And of course, there is that. I'm not saying you didn't love the character. There is that too. But a big part of it is that he didn't pay off what he had set up. Now, he did that on purpose, and he had to know he was going to get hate for that. I think he did, and he was willing to risk that and to weather it. But the reason he was willing to do that is because he knows that it will be paid off just much later, right? So in terms of them spoiling things, I do believe that most TV shows leak spoilers on purpose. There was a lot of evidence back when the Spoiling Dead fans was still a site that they were being fed spoilers by someone, and that, theoretically not necessarily the actors, but the bigger, like the studio, the powers that be, could have stopped them if they'd wanted to. I mean, maybe they couldn't have stopped them in any given week from leaking something, just, depending on exactly what the process was. But if they were really angry that they were leaking things and didn't want them to, they could have brought lawsuits against them, and they never did that. So you got to understand that most shows leak stuff like this because they want the audience to have a reason to watch the show. They want them to have something to look forward to. They usually try to leak something that's either very shocking or maybe something people have been waiting for, or just something that's very, very emotional in some way. So it doesn't have to be sad, but it could be sad, or super high adrenaline, or, you know, something like that. And it's because that's what gets people excited. That's why there are such things as movie trailers. Movie trailers also give us spoilers. You know, they try not to spoil like the end of the movie, but they give us something to look forward to, and people go, oh, that looks awesome. That's getting me hyped up. Now I want to watch that. That's why they leak spoilers. So, I do think that they were leaked on purpose. I think they usually are, to get people excited about the show, also to set some expectations, which I do think they were doing in this case, and more of what I've been talking about the last few days with a certain ship, trying to let them know that what they think is going to happen is not actually going to happen. So you said they didn't need to spoil Isabel's death. Well, you know, of course they didn't need to, but I think part of that is to let people like us know that, you know, what if there is an episode halfway through the season where she and Daryl have a candid talk and actually decide that maybe they'll try to have a relationship together. That's going to freak most people on TV out. So this actually might have been an outreach for us saying, no, give us a couple of more episodes, because she's going to die and it's not going to be like that long term. You see what I mean? Like, it was almost it is setting expectations, but it's also, I don't know, what's the word, like a balm for us to, they're throwing us a bone. Let's put it that way. And I do think that this scene is, you know, like I said, it was also for certain ships because they're trying to show what's going on here, and that Daryl and Carol are not smooching all over France. You know what I mean? That's not the way it's ending. That's not where they're going with it. Sophia, I don't know. It feels like that had already kind of been leaked because they did a casting call and were looking for, I think, people to play Sophia. And I don't know. Like you said, they don't have to spoil anything, but I think there is reason behind what they did, so that we could kind of see where the season was going to end, and so that they could set expectations, both in terms of, for both the good and the bad, right? Both in terms of, you know, this is not where we're going with Daryl and Carol, so that they were letting people know that, but also that Isabel's dying, so no matter what happens between her and Daryl, we kind of know that it's not going to be long term. And then with Sophia, I mean, it's giving us an idea of Carol's arc and maybe why it's called the Book of Carol. But yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of rambling now. I don't know if that really answers your question. It's just that they use these very strategically to let the audience know certain things, and that's the best way I can think to say it. They're just setting expectations for the season, but it's also a way of getting people hyped up, kind of giving us an endpoint to shoot for, and giving us a snapshot of what it's going to look like at the end of the season, so that maybe we're not hoping for things that aren't going to happen, but also, like I said, if we can kind of guess where it's going to go, we're actually more likely to watch it, not less likely to watch it. And that's just a psychological thing. But trust me, people who run really successful shows and movie franchises, they understand these things, and they do make use of them. So I don't know if that answers your question. Those are just my very, very rambling thoughts on the situation. But I was actually glad that leaked, because it told us a lot of things that I almost feel like when something leaks, yeah, there have been times that it might be a little bit alarming in some ways. For example, let me give you an example of this. Back in season 6, some pictures, it was when they were filming season 6, so I don't think we had started seeing it yet. And there were some pictures leaked of Daryl and Denise. And I guarantee you they leaked those as a way to tease people, and they were kind of going, oh, is this going to be a couple? And of course, the fans freaked out and said they've been seen doing scenes together, you know, this could be a new love interest, and all that did was get people really, really talking about season 6. And then when we first meet her, like the first episode she's in, it's revealed that she's a lesbian and would not be interested in Daryl romantically because of that. So, like, it was kind of all for nothing. Like, the hype didn't end up meaning anything. But they did that to get people talking, and you know what I mean? So there are times when they can spoil something that might be kind of alarming, but for the most part, when something gets spoiled, and I know that there's kind of a place that we're shooting for, in a way, to me, it actually makes me calmer. And it also gives us, in terms of our theories and interpreting symbolism, it also gives us kind of something to shoot for, because if we know where it's ending, then we can look out for symbolism of that along the way, and that can sometimes help us understand the overall symbolism of the season a little better. And I'm not saying that's exactly why they spoil. Yeah, I don't think they're spoiling things thinking this is for TD so they can interpret our symbolism. No, I don't think that's why. But that's why I kind of enjoy when they spoil things. So anyway, like I said, I don't know if that answers your question, but those are just kind of my thoughts on it. So, like I said, as of right now, that is the last ask that I have, but I'm sure we'll get more. And like I said, we're only a few weeks away, so I'm super excited. And I will be back to ramble more in a few days. So, all right, have a wonderful day, guys. Bye.